Welcome to episode 406 for Control Talk Now, where we discuss all things HVAC and smart building controls, including sales and marketing. Today, we hit on a topic that makes or breaks every one of us: leadership. At some point in time, all of us have gotten or will get the call to lead a group of people. It's usually an established group, a group that has had a leader before you, and this leader has either been promoted, in which case you're being asked at the very least to keep the group successful. In other words, don't screw it up. But more than likely, you're being asked to not only not screw it up, but to make it better. Or the leader before you has been asked to leave, and you're being brought in to fix the problems and get the train and the people back on track. The good news is you've probably gotten a promotion. The bad news is now you have to figure out how to lead a group of people who are probably not thrilled that you're their new boss, and are certainly not happy about having to change. Nobody ever likes change. So your success is going to depend on these very people. Unless you can get buy-in from them, they're not going to be part of the solution, and you're probably going to fail. So the question is there a playbook for this type of situation? The answer is yes. In fact, there are several different ways to win a group over and become an effective leader. On this episode, we're going to give you some tools to become a better and more effective leader, and talk about being thrown into the fire. My guest this week is Rob Allen. My brother and I asked Rob to take over the day-to-day operations at Stromquist & Company several years ago. Not only was Rob asked to lead people that had been in the industry many more years than he had, he was also asked to lead people that had been at Stromquist & Company much longer than he had. And on top of that, can you imagine the expectations and sense of responsibility my brother and I charged Rob with, running the company our father had founded and that we'd run for several decades before we turned the reins over to Rob? Wasn't an easy situation for him, and he's done great, as you'll hear. And you also hear that Rob's story is inspiring, and it's inspiring, and that there's much, much, much to learn about how Rob earned the respect of the other employees at Stromquist & Company and created a culture that is taking Stromquist & Company to a whole new level. Great leadership is based on great leadership principles. Studying great leaders is the first step to becoming one yourself. There are four things that every great leader in history has done. First, they had communicated a clear vision of a future that was better than the way things were at that time. I call this brightness of future. This includes a bold vision and the right challenge to make people want to follow you. John F. Kennedy did not tell Congress in 1961 the Soviets were kicking our butt and we needed to catch up with them and get ahead of them in the race to space. Instead, he said, "We choose to go to the moon, and we will send an American to the moon and return them safely by the end of the decade." This was a message. It was the message and vision that the American people and his team needed to be the first country in the world to land a man on the moon, July 20th, 1969. Second, great leaders have a great frequency of interaction, or high frequency of interaction with the people they lead. This includes making sure that everyone on the team understands the vision, their role in accomplishing the vision, and that they have everything they need to do to make sure they get their job done. Great leaders ask great questions, and they listen. They really listen to what the team tells them. As you will hear from Rob, that doesn't mean that you always take someone's on the team's advice. It does mean you make sure that everyone on the team feels heard and appreciated. Good leaders always do these first two steps, but great leaders do one step further than that. They communicate something called darkness of future. And it's basically, as the vision of the goal is not accomplished, they communicate the consequences of not succeeding. An example might be, you could say to your team, our competition is taking more of our market share because we're not providing the best customer support we can. And if we don't up our game and this trend continues, our sales could drop by as much as 5%, which might mean we have to cut costs, which no one wants to do. But if we increase our customer support, our revenues will go up, which means that at the end of the year, we'll probably all get bonuses. So that's an example of using both the brightness of future and the darkness of future together. One way leaders, especially politicians, play the darkness of future is by creating a common enemy. Julius Caesar persuaded the Senate in Rome to forego the Republic and all the freedoms that implied to make him a dictator for life because he convinced them it was the only way to protect Rome from its feared enemy, the Gauls. Finally, great leaders are masters of metaphors. A good metaphor can change the meaning of any situation, and it plays on the emotions of people. People very rarely will change based on logic, but they will go to war and fight to the death when they're inspired by the right metaphor. For example, notice the effectiveness or lack of effectiveness of these two statements. I'm going to get rid of the corruption in our government versus I'm going to drain the swamp. Draining the swamp was effective when Mussolini said it in the 1930s, and again when Donald Trump said it when he was running for president. The New Deal was a metaphor that Franklin Roosevelt used to inspire the Americans out of the Great Depression. I have a dream is a metaphor that Martin Luther King used to inspire millions. Great leaders use great metaphors. Google them and use them. If a great metaphor has worked in the past, it will work again. So start collecting great metaphors if you want to be a great leader. I remember years ago at Stromquist and Company, leadership was torn on whether or not we should bring in an outside consultant to work with us. We had debated for hours. We were divided and undecided, and it spent way too much time debating the subject. My brother, who's a great leader, had not said a word, but then chimed in and said, well, do any of you even know what a consultant is anyway? That stopped us all. We all got curious. And when he responded, a consultant is someone who knows 100,000 different ways to make love to a woman, but doesn't know any women. Well, that was the end of that. I'm not knocking consultants. We've used consultants since then, and we'll use them in the future. But it is a great example of how the right metaphor can change the meaning of a situation. In our case, freed up our gridlock and allowed us to move on. Okay, so brightness of future, frequency of interaction, darkness of future, and mastering the metaphor. That's what you need to focus on to become a great leader. Hey, we have a new sponsor this week. So before we get to Rob, a quick word from this week's sponsor. LinkSpring, embracing open software and hardware platforms. LinkSpring develops, manufactures, distributes, and supports edge to enterprise solutions and IP technology that creates smarter buildings, smarter equipment, and smarter applications. The company's Genesis Edge programmable IP controllers for buildings, equipment, unitary, plant, VAV, and more is the industry's first hardware portfolio that ported the Niagara framework onto hardware other than a Jace. Each includes a full Niagara stack, built-in expandable I/O, and multiple licensing options. When combined, Genesis Edge devices enables for Niagara IP horizontal topology and architecture. For more information about LinkSpring, go to www.linkspring.com. Okay, thanks to LinkSpring for supporting the show. And if you would like to be seen and heard by the global Control Trends community, click on the link in the show notes and find out how you can sponsor a ControlTalk Now show too. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the COO of Stromquist and Company, Rob Allen. All right, I've got Rob Allen, the COO of Stromquist and Company, on as my guest this week. And Rob runs my favorite distributor, Stromquist and Company, out of Atlanta and Orlando. So, Rob, man, thanks for taking some time to talk with us.
Absolutely. So proud to be here. So proud to run your favorite distributor as well.
Well, you're doing a great job with it. So for our viewers out there, sort of walk us through your journey.
How I got to Stromquist. It's funny. So I spent 10 years in a different industry with nothing that I learned in 10 years from the business part of that place transitioned over here. It was totally different. And I wanted to make a career change, and I felt like at the age I was that I could probably reinvent myself. I struggled with a overqualified, underqualified scenario where I couldn't make a lateral move into a new industry, and folks didn't trust that I would come and reinvent myself and not just take a job and then hop the first chance that I got to get back to where I was. And so then we stumbled across Stromquist, and there was a mutual tie-in and a recommendation made. And I came in and interviewed with David and Eric on the infamous orange couch. If you've been to Stromquist pre 2014, you know it was a incredibly awesome time warp. Wood paneling walls, orange and green couches. It was neat stuff. We we interviewed, and I felt like it went really well. And David called me a few days later and said, all right, well, we're going to offer you a job. And it seemed kind of begrudgingly that he was going to offer me this job. And I kind of couldn't figure out why. And he gave me a number, and I said, okay, well, that's about 70% less than what I'm making right now. But that's okay, because I wanted to start over. This is what it was going to be. And so I accepted. Then I think it was a day later, and Eric, you called me. Without trying to talk me out of taking the job, you sort of kind of talked me out of trying to take the job.
Those of you who know me know that I'm notorious. I'm a really, really tough interviewer. And part of it is if you can't endure my interview, then I know you got what it takes to be in sales. And ultimately, we were grooming you for a sales position down the line. Right? So I was giving you all the reasons. I don't think you're right for the job. I don't, this is not for you, which I do with anybody I'm interviewing for sales. I tell them no. I give them all the reasons because I want to see how they're going to respond to that. And to your credit, you thought about it for a minute. You looked at me and said, look, here's the deal. I'll work for you for 90 days. At the end of 90 days, if it doesn't work out, we'll part company in good stead. It'll all be okay. But I'm going to tell you something. If you give me a 90-day chance, I'm going to be the best employee you've ever had. And part of the reason I want to highlight that is that got my attention. It's one thing if you take the risk off the table, like, hey, I'll leave 90 days. But it's something else when somebody is bold enough to say, I will be the best employee you've ever had. So with that, we put you on, and we started you at the bottom. I mean, I think you started out like all of us packing boxes. You moved from packing boxes to, the counter to inside sales to outside sales. And one of the things I noticed about you, Rob, was whatever we asked you to do, you did it. You strove to do it better than anybody else. And most of the times you did, but you were humble about the whole thing. Yeah. I don't know what that was like for you, but I was watching you going, man, this guy's got the stuff.
It sounds like it's hard and difficult, but the reality is that when it was funny, the first day I looked around, I'm like, oh, this is about the size of my old office. This is pretty cool. But then I realized there was about 7 other people sitting in the office with me. So that was slightly humbling. But even back then, I mean, we're such a great company from the opportunities that we give people, and we'll hire seasoned veterans and pop them right in and let them go. We'll hire engineering graduates from tech and different things, and then we'll give somebody a shot off the street that doesn't have much knowledge or experience at all, and pop them into the warehouse or customer service and let them see where they go. And that was obvious to me when I first started working, and we knew that the customer is what mattered first, and I wrapped my head around that. And you can't guarantee outcome, you can only guarantee opportunity. There's always opportunity at Stromquist, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I love it.
I want to reiterate to our listeners out there, especially if you're in a company and want to work your way up, or even if you're not in this industry and thinking about it, this is a great industry to come in with experience or no experience to get trained, and you can really progress very rapidly here. And again, Rob's, I think your attitude about whatever the job you ask me to do, I'll do. You were humble. And I think that is a quality as somebody that ran a company. I'm always looking for somebody who's willing to work hard and that's humble. You were coachable. We could coach you. But at the same time, you also knew what you believed in and what you thought was right. I can't tell you how many times, and this is the way, if you got to tell your boss he's full of bull, Rob was great at it. Rob would say, hey, Eric, I'll do that if you want me to. But I think it's a mistake, and here's why. I think part of it is you have to be an asset to the leader in terms of telling them the truth, right?
With what we do now, we put a huge emphasis on feedback. And every new hire, I let them get their feet wet for a few days. And with the first week, definitely not any longer than the second week, we talk about the importance of feedback. And we want to know what people are liking, what they're struggling with, what they want to learn.
So, Rob, we made you the chief operating officer. I mean, the first thing you're doing, how do you create a new culture? So our audience through that, because it's kind of daunting. I know it was for me when my dad retired and I took over, and, it's just like people are used to doing things a certain way. How do you get them on the same page? How do you get it where they'll let you lead them?
Yeah, for sure. And, I always try to coach young people and all people really is just make sure you're always trying to do the right thing at the right time, because you never know when an opportunity is going to present itself. And that's sort of how it was for me. It went from, okay, you're not doing this, and now you're going to go do this. And I went and did it. And it was interesting because like I said, I came into the industry, I didn't know anything. And so many of my coworkers I credit with teaching me the industry, and Eric and David. And then all of a sudden it's, okay, the guy that I was just training 2 years ago is now my boss. That's a little weird, and it was weird for both of us, right? And we had to figure that out. But I knew that culture was important. I'd seen where I still to this day, I think that the two most important things you need in a company are people and process. And I knew that when we started to try to implement some new things that we might lose some people. And that was scary because Stromquist really doesn't lose some people. That's one of my most fun things, is to walk around and ask people when we have a guest in, how long have you been here? How long have you been here? And we get 10 years, 15, 25, 35, 40 years. But what I did from day one, I created a creed, and the creed is feedback, buy-in, and good purpose. The feedback part is we're all doing our jobs all across the different company and making this big wheel turn. And especially me, I don't necessarily know what the struggles of the people in the warehouse are, or always what the struggle of the people in inside sales are struggling with. And we created a safe place for people to give feedback on what's working and what isn't working. I stole something. I borrowed something from Joe Chandler, demands, wants, and wishes. We coupled that along with issues and ideas, and that's the core of our feedback mechanism, where people can provide an issue. This isn't working. I don't really know what to do to make it work, or I have an idea. This isn't working. Here's my idea to fix it. And then demands, wants, wishes is something a little bit separate. It's a way to request things that you might need within the company to be able to do your job better. That didn't work very well for about 3 years. Honestly, we had some people that did it really well, but a lot of people didn't. But most recently, the last couple of years, feedback is really what we've gotten a lot of. When people feel that they have a voice, and when they see that leadership or coworkers are reacting to resolving the problems that they have, the people start to really buy into that. We want everybody to give a voice. We want everybody to give an opinion. We're not a democracy. We're not going to, whoever gets the most votes, this is what we're going to do. The example I give is, if we're going to ask what we think we should paint the walls, everyone, somebody's going to say hot pink, somebody's going to say blue, somebody's going to say gray. At the end of the day, we're going to make a decision based on all the input that we have and what we know that makes the most sense. Buy into whatever that decision is. These days, unanimously, people are buying in because they feel like they had a voice. And the last thing is good purpose. Being Stromquist founded the company in 1951. Eric's dad, David Stromquist's dad. I was told by a lot of different people that being Stromquist always said, speak with good purpose. And that's to each other, to your suppliers, to your customers. And to me, it's very simple. And I say there's three things that are non-negotiable: feedback, buy-in, and good purpose. Everything else we can work out.
But it took some time, is what I hear you saying. It took about 3 years to get the complete buy-in. So your persistence paid off, right? I mean, you sort of stayed the course, even though you had to have gotten discouraged, I'm guessing.
Leading people is, most people would probably say, the most challenging thing that you do, right? I mean, Michael Bonner, he was hired 2 weeks before me. We're frickin' frack, and he always says you got multiple piles and you got to push all those piles at the same time. Another thing that we liked and spent a lot of time on, personality profiles. You say that, and I think some people go, whoa, wait a minute, a personality test, like, this seems uncomfortable. But I started messing with that back in 2016, and I think it's one of the neatest things that you can do is start to understand how we're all wired different. We're all hardwired to be a different thing. And no matter how much you try, no matter what you do, you can improve on how you're hardwired, but you're always that way.
Right. Well, can you give us an example how you, understanding their personality, were able to get them on the same page with you? I
have a very successful outside salesperson who is an ST, and typically STs don't do great in outside sales. And this person had 1 million questions. If he didn't have 1 million questions, he had 10 million questions. And it was just questions. And I've always said, sales is an art. It's not a science. What worked this time, what got your message across to the customer this time, you could say exactly the same thing to the next person. It's probably not going to work, right? But a light bulb went off, because after this person got his 1,000,001 question answered, he felt comfortable. And he felt like he had a way to be able to have a full understanding of what was asked of him. Thrives to this day, and customers love him.
Rob, I think probably one of the biggest assets that somebody can have, and I think it's been obviously true in your case, is understanding that people are wired differently. And just because somebody doesn't get it or see things the way you do, it doesn't mean they can't be a valuable part of your team. If somebody's not getting it, that's on me. If they're not doing what you need them to do, maybe I'm not communicating this in a way that they clearly understand. How can I shift how I'm communicating it? So I think you got to do that first to give them a chance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always said the easiest person in the room to improve upon is yourself.
What do you do if you can't get somebody to buy into the culture?
You do have to understand that, including myself, that no person's bigger than the company. No person's bigger than the culture, right? Just recently, we lost a person and asked a person to leave, and it was tough, and it really bothered me. I think it bothered some people. But gosh, you look back and you can see a before and a after, and you don't realize the impact sometimes that people have on other people. That sometimes it's just not a culture fit. It doesn't mean that we're a good or a bad company or you're a good or a bad person. It's just not a fit.
Part of the job as a leader is you got to protect the culture at all costs. You give everybody a chance to play. You sort of eliminate any other possibility they didn't understand or they needed time to adopt to the culture. But at a certain point in time as a leader, if you've got to protect the culture, right?
Absolutely. You got to think about everybody, but being transparent and understanding what's our purpose as a company, and letting people know that there are different personality types, but we all blend because we all, share something in common with each other. But it's been really neat. One of the coolest things I learned, I kept reading different things, and it talked about humility is one of the core things of a good leader and a good person is being humble. I've never thought of myself as not humble. I've never thought of myself as arrogant or anything there, but I struggle with that. I was like, okay, I want to be more humble. And I messed it up. I mean, for 6 months, a year, 18 months, I was walking around self-deprecating humor. I'm being humble, right? Or I don't know, guys. I'm not whatever. And it just felt so awkward. But I was like, it's going to feel awkward. That's just that's when you're trying to learn something new. And the gift of hindsight kicked in an instant when I was driving to see a customer, one of our sales guys. He was sort of new, and I hadn't really been out on the road and sold in a while. This is just when we're coming out of COVID. None of us were really out doing much of anything during COVID. We roll into the first place, and I'm there to support the salesperson. And the first question was answered. He was a little new, and he didn't know the answer. So I gave the answer. And then this pattern continues where all of a sudden I'm sitting there trying to remember all different things about product and different things that we do. And we get in the car, and the person pays me a compliment and says, wow, I hope that one day, I can be as confident and I can be good like that as well too. And I was like, okay, be humble. And I think that at some point, a lot of us by default go, yeah, I know, yeah, with a lot of experience and all this, whatever, you'll be like me one day too. And I said, honestly, I was terrified. I said, I was actually terrified. I said, I felt like one more question, I wasn't going to have the answer, and we were going to be exposed. But we pushed through, and thank gosh that didn't happen. And you could see almost 20 pounds just lift right off that person's shoulder. And at the same time, 20 pounds lifted off to me. And that's when I finally got it. Like sharing vulnerability, being humble, saying, I don't always have it figured out. I don't always know the answer. I'll never forget that day because that's when it clicked. That's what humility is. Humility is going, I don't have the answer. We're in this together. And it lets people know that you can work towards things, and not having the answer is okay, and being wrong is okay.
It's a great story, Rob. That's a really, really great story. Yeah, because I think all of us have an idea of what being humble is. I think you just gave a great definition. Not pretending if you weren't terrified or it was hard or whatever. And also, I think one of the really great things you can do when you're humble is when somebody pays you a compliment, a genuine compliment, you're humble enough to just say thank you. Really letting the compliment in is a form of humility too, right? Because it gives the other person the power to compliment you, and you're not sloughing it off. I kind of wanted to cycle back around and sort of sum up, three of the things that I heard you say about a leader, and then we want to go on. So to me, and we spent some time with the same teacher, Marshall Thurber, and you talked earlier about your process, right? And Marshall had this thing called fair process, which basically is, as a leader, everybody has the right to voice their opinion, okay? But it's not a democracy, Okay, but I'll listen to what you have to say. I'll try it on. And then then the leader ultimately has to decide what's best for the company, right? The leader has to decide. So that's one of it, one aspect of it. The other aspect, which you've described, and I want to put it in words and see if you agree with this. Marshall used to draw a big fruit bowl, and he had all these pieces of fruit in it. He said the leader is the one that holds the context, the culture, the context, right? So the leader's job is to make sure that all the fruits can do, that's probably a bad analogy, can do what they need to do, right? And doing what they do also comes down with probably the most important thing a leader does, which is create the vision. Create the vision, then communicate the vision, then hold the context, protect the culture, empower people to execute on the vision and protect the culture. So we've kind of hit on everything except for the vision part. Talk to me about where do you get your visions for where you want to take the company?
It's interesting, right? Because we all felt pretty good in 2019 about where we were going and where the industry was taking us and what we needed to do, and then all that got turned on its head in early 2020. And for a lot of folks, their vision and their purpose and their direction and strategies changed nearly overnight. And for some folks, it was let's just try to keep whole, and other folks were taking advantage of the situations. We really took the opportunity to take a look, and we decided early on. I'm so appreciative of David and Eric, but we decided early on we're going to do everything we possibly can not to do any layoffs or any furloughs throughout this whole COVID thing, and we didn't. And I'm super. I got chills thinking about that because it was tough. We had some tough conversations there. The three of us trying to figure out how we're going to keep past that, and our folks don't know that, and I think that's good. It was neat to come out on the other end of that. But what we decided to do, our leadership team, is we decided to take the quote unquote downtime and get ourselves scalable. And we wanted to put ourselves in a position that whatever was thrown our way, another global pandemic or an industry shift or anything that happened, like we wanted to be able to be ready for whatever was thrown our way. And so we started to think about, well, what does that look like? And as we know, I mean, it's going to come right back to the people thing, but we were so lucky in being in business for as long as we have. We've had all those customers with a long tenure here, but we saw a new generation of workers coming into the industry, and they wanted something different. And they weren't okay with being an inside salesperson for 35 or 40 years. They weren't okay with being 10 years in this and 30 years in outside sales. They needed something different. And so we sat down and we created a whole new onboarding system, and we created a lot of, you weren't inside sales, you were customer service, you were technical sales, you were technical support. And we provided a track and a path. We saw that a lot of people came in and really, really appreciated that. And we put a big emphasis on promotions and a clear path to how you get a promotion and what's involved. We had everybody sit down and put together growth initiatives. We're in the South, so our growth initiatives are called GRITs. We just had to shorten that up. So everybody has GRITs.
Nice.
And it's something that they want to do to focus on making the company better, themselves better, or better yet, all of those things. And it gave everybody a path and a purpose. And now we can onboard customer service people by 2 weeks in a day. They're working email quotes and orders and processing stuff. And then from there, it takes on a whole new level where you're almost onboarding, for 3 years to get folks that come in with no industry experience and maybe no work experience and can build themselves a rewarding career. And that's one of the things we do is we want to be easy to do business with, and we want all of our employees to be able to build a rewarding career.
When you're talking to a customer as the leader of Stromquist and Company, and they say, well, what can we expect if we do business with Stromquist and Company? What do you tell them?
We tell them that we want to be easy to do business with. We don't want to be your single source. We provide a value package, and our sales guys are really great about sitting down and understanding what is important to you. We try to never say no. We try to never say no. We try to make it where it makes sense, and you can call us and sure, we'll source this for you. We'll source that for you. We'll have this in stock for you. If we see that you're going to buy it a lot more, we'll stock more of it so it's ready to go, and we'll support it. We'll train your folks on it as well too. So if you can come into Stromquist and be find a place that's a one-stop shop, and you build a true partner in the industry, the P word's one of my other favorite words, partnership. How do we partner? How do you want to partner?
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of customers, a lot of customers, a lot of companies that get with us, and we grow together, and we get better together because they present new problems and we provide new solutions.
Always what I've been taught, and that's what you're exemplifying now, is we take really good care of our people. We take really good care of our customers, and it's about integrity first. I like to tell people, we're in it for the long haul. If I can't do business with you today, at some point down the line, we will, but we're not going to compromise our quality and what we're providing.
One of our company values is win-win customer service. It was funny. My previous industry was low price was king, and first week I'm on the phones at inside sales, and I heard someone say, "Well, I can sell you this one. It's a little less expensive, and it does the same thing." And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Wait a minute, we're not charging the most that we possibly can. And then you quickly realize that this is the long game, right? This is about creating partnerships, and in partnerships, both sides can win-win, and for both sides to win-win, it might not always be ideal for the other, but at the grand scheme of things, it's, and at the end of the day, decade-long partnerships and 30, 40, 50-year partnerships that we've been lucky to have here. Our best partners will always say that, we win. Stromquist wins, and we win too.
All great leaders. One of the things I admire about you is that you're constantly growing. You're constantly challenging yourself. You're reading all the time. For our listeners out there, give us 2 or 3 book recommendations and tell us why you would recommend they read them.
Culture Code is a good one. The Daniel Croyle, and he does a book called Talent Code too. It's about learning, but Culture Code is really neat. He talks about 3 things. It's sharing vulnerability, it's building safety, and it's establishing purpose.
Rob, how do people get a hold of Stromquist Company if they want to buy stuff so they can help finance my studio here?
Stromquist.com. And we can get you with an outside salesperson, an inside salesperson. We can get you in contact with me, but Stromquist.com.
Man, thanks so much for taking time to be with us, Rob. Really appreciate it. Hey, man, you're doing a great job. Keep it up, man. My wife and my youngest kids appreciate all you're doing for us.
Thank you so much. And man, I appreciate it. And I love the company that your dad started, you guys built. And it's just, it's great. I pinch myself every day. I'm a lucky guy.
Okay, that's another week on Control Talk Now. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Until then, remember, be bold, stay in control, stay relevant, find something to lead, and remember what Hunter Thompson always used to say, buy the ticket, take the ride.